Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Joe Goossen had this to say. He says, Fury learned new game in one camp. Why can't Wilder learn to fight on the inside?
I don't know.
He was quoted as saying, Fury pretty much said what he was going to do. I didn't necessarily believe him when he said, look, I'm going to go out and try to knock him out early. I feel like with my new trainer, I never knew anything about boxing before. I've really learned a lot in just one camp. I feel like I'm punching with my knuckles more. My whole rundown, and credited it to one camp. Remember, the key line here is, I feel I really didn't know how to fight until I got with Sugar Hill. So, will it take Deontay Wilder years to figure out subtleties about the inside game that he lacked? Well, didn't take years for Fury to learn a new game in one camp, did it? Because nobody had seen him fight like that. He's always been a boxer, until he hurts you or you're too small for him, and then he'll wear you out. But for the most part, he learned to do new things in one camp with Sugar. So if you ask me, can Wilder be taught? He's got a lot of time before they fight again. Almost half a year. Of course, he can learn some new things. He's capable of learning. I just think that his style worked for him for so long that he didn't really need to concentrate on the inside game at all. And therefore, he paid for it dearly in the last fight. All I know is this, that Deontay Wilder, under the right instructions from qualified guys, which he's got right there, could make a concentrated effort to line up the right, sparring for him, where he's going to get beat up while learning how to fight on the inside. Because sometimes you have to put your guy in a particular spot in sparring. You've got to say, you're not moving around, you're going to sit in a corner here, and I'm going to throw 4 guys at you over the next 10 rounds. And you're going to block, parry, slip, counter, bump, touch and go, slip and counter, parries and counters, all while not moving, okay? I've done that with several fighters. I did it with Joel Casamayor. I did it with Michael Nunn. So I kind of had to figure out a technique to get these guys to work on the inside, but you can't put them in with top guys while they're doing that. They'll get eaten up while they're learning. You've got to just put in bodies that will throw punches at them, where they won't pay a dear price while they're learning. You do that over the course of a couple months. The guy will be 120% better on the inside in his next fight. I guarantee you that. It's never too late, Goossen said. I think that if they really do their homework and figure out drills in the gym, in the ring, where they just practice the inside game, well, now you combine that with your outside game. So if the flow of the fight takes you inside, you're going to feel confident. You're not going to feel panicky and hold on and wrestle and expend energy. You're going to be able to ride out the inside stuff and then deliver your own damage. And that's a double-pronged attack right there. If you have to reach that Wilder has and that great long-distance right hand and learn a percentage of the inside game, it'll take him a long way. At least he'll be able to defend himself against somebody that's trying to bully him. See, he had no answer for the bullying tactics, and there's nothing like two-handed, short shots, tight defense, left hands to the body, left uppercuts, left hooks. You've got to use that left hand. He relies too much on the right hand. So if he's going to develop his left hand, you can do that. It's just about repetition. Those are the professional anecdotes of veteran trainer Joe Goossen. And maybe Joe's onto something. But the idea that this dramatic change could happen for Wilder specifically, it does seem a little bit far-fetched. You know, Joe himself said that Tyson Fury was able to learn something new in just one camp. But he also said that Tyson Fury was always a boxer. Emphasis on always a boxer. Tyson Fury already had the necessary palate that entails making those adjustments, being able to make those adjustments. He already had the palette for you to paint that picture.
Does Wilder?
Joe talked about, Wilder's dimensions as a fighter. Joe talked about Wilder's long-distance right hand, the right hand that he can fire from the outside and do a lot of damage in the process. He talked about this. But even as an outside fighter, Wilder's got more work needs doing there as well, let alone on the inside where he seems defenseless. It's not like Wilder's the best outside fighter either.
He's not.
He's flustered by the movements of an Artur Spilka, a much smaller fighter than himself. He literally walked into a left hook from Eric Molina, and his knees buckled. He was visibly hurt by it. It's not as simple as saying that all Deontay Wilder needs to do is learn to box from the inside. His outside game needs some work as well.
That's the basic idea here.
It's really not as simple as saying that all Wilder needs to do is add 1 or 2 things ahead of this rubber match that will make all the difference, because he will be facing someone that is without the limitations that he himself has as a fighter. Tyson Fury can box from the outside, and he can do it comfortably. He can box comfortably from the inside as well, and he can do these things from either stance because he's ambidextrous. He can do it as an orthodox fighter. He can do it as a southpaw. And Wilder is intended to get it together enough in one camp.
Just one.
After a beating like that.
It's asking a lot, Joe.
I'm not taking the piss here. It really is asking a lot. It is all muscle memory at the end of the day. Practice, practice, practice. Certain motions, certain movements and repetition, certain drills over the course of time embed themselves in the athlete's muscles, the proverbial muscle memory, as it were. So for a fighter who's gone on as long as Deontay Wilder has, winning fights a certain way for as long as Deontay Wilder has, to learn all these different strategies and add all these different layers in just one camp, coming off a loss, coming off of bicep surgery.
It really is asking a lot.
And if you are going to be asking this of Deontay Wilder in just one camp under these circumstances, who's to teach it to him? Deontay Wilder talked about bringing 2 new faces, 2 new people on board to help him prepare for this rubber match, and as of yet, we don't know who they are. There's that to consider. Who you're bringing on, just as well, how good a student is Deontay Wilder? Because you can have the best teachers in the world and it means nothing if you yourself are set in your ways. After 40-something contests of relying on the right hand, Deontay Wilder's suddenly supposed to be well-versed with his left?
Become well-versed with his left.
So there's the loss and the surgery to consider. Who he's bringing on to help him ahead of this rubber match to also consider. The student and the teacher situation to consider. That you can have the best teachers, but that doesn't automatically make you the best student. There are these things to consider, and then there are the other intangibles. Perhaps Deontay Wilder can add a few tricks to his repertoire, but once he's in the fight, if he's hit with a shot that he doesn't like, how do we know that he won't resort to doing what he's been doing before that? You know what they say, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face. All that might go out the window thereafter. Guy gets hit, guy gets hurt. How do we know that Wilder doesn't resort to doing what he would have normally done
his normal shit
before? Is he mentally strong enough, physically well-versed enough to follow a game plan, a new game plan that is a great deviation from what his game plans used to look like, which basically boiled down to relying on the right hand and relying on it for several fights, several years? Deontay Wilder have the mental discipline, physical discipline, coming off a loss and surgery to a torn bicep? Does he have that kind of discipline? Does he have that kind of ability? Because I'll tell you what, this one hell of a vote of confidence from Joe Goossen, and maybe a part of him wants to believe that Wilder can get it together. Maybe it's a possibility, but a probability?
Wow.
Well, that's quite another story. There is what's possible, and there is what's probable. Those two things aren't always the same thing. I look at the comments from Andy Lee, Tyson Fury's cousin and co-trainer, saying that Mark Breland saved Wilder's career by throwing that towel. I understand where this anecdote is coming from and how it might be skewed, but I also understand that there's some truth to it. Imagine had the beating that Wilder took gone on longer than it did. Would there be anything left of Deontay Wilder to bring into a third fight?
That's a valid question.
Andy was quoted as saying, "I think Wilder's corner did the right thing to throw the towel. I think Mark Breland did an excellent job. He might have saved Deontay Wilder's career because you can't take a sustained beating like that from a man Tyson Fury's size. He was punching with authority. After the fight, Wilder said he would be willing to die in the ring rather than have a fight prematurely stopped. He also complained that his energy was zapped due to the heavy attire that he wore en route to the ring. Some part of the complaints of Wilder is saving face. No fighter wants it to be stopped, regardless of the way," said Lee. "That's the fighter's spirit, but I think now he probably understands. Having watched it again, I think it was the right call. I'm not sure what I would have done in the situation. I probably would have done the same thing." I'm not dismissive of what Andy Lee is saying because I think there's some truth to it. Had the fight gone on longer than it did, what would have been left of Deontay Wilder to bring into a third fight? He might have been in worse condition than he is here and now today. We don't actually know how bad his condition is. What we know is that he had to have surgery to his bicep, other surgery, this is like the 8th by my count, Psychologically, we really don't know where Deontay Wilder is. He can put on a brave face and make a couple of public statements, but at the end of the day, only he knows where he is right now, psychologically, what kind of headspace he's in. And how much worse would that have been if the fight went on longer, if he took an even longer sustained beating at the hands of Tyson Fury? Those things in mind, yes, I think Andy Lee, he's talking about something real. He's not just playing sides.
He's right.
It's an honest assessment. If this fight would have gone on longer, Deontay Wilder might not have been in any position to go into a third fight. And in that way, Mark Breland perhaps saved enough of Wilder's career that there can even be a third fight. Ben Davidson, the friend and former trainer of Tyson Fury, had some anecdotes of his own to add to the conversation. He said, "You have to admire the self-belief of Deontay Wilder. But do you?" A portion of the article reads, "The trainer switch had absolutely no effect on Fury, as he dropped and stopped Deontay Wilder in 7 rounds to capture the WBC World title at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. After the fight, Wilder exercised his contractual right to an immediate rematch. Third fight is being targeted for the fall. The former champion claims that he wasn't himself when he entered the ring. According to Wilder, his legs were physically drained from wearing a 40-pound outfit for his ring walk. Because of the circumstances, Wilder has refused to recognize Fury as the true WBC World Champion." Davison understands why Wilder, who oozes confidence, is taking that position.
Oozes confidence.
The only thing Wilder was oozing was blood out of his ear, his face, after that fight.
Whatever you say, man.
"It's just a case of wording," Davison told Behind the Gloves. "And any fighter who believes in himself will have that thought process. Obviously, Tyson, I believe, won the first fight and done a demolition job in a second fight. And I believe he'll win the third fight. But I think there's 2 ways to look at it. Was obviously a poor choice of words, but you also have to admire the self-belief Wilder has in himself. Ladies and gentlemen, there's self-belief, and then there are delusions.
Being delusional.
The distinction, the line that separates them can sometimes be a thin line, especially in this sport where one is required to believe in himself when all others do not. But is this self-belief that we see from Deontay Wilder? Is this what we've seen from him over the years?
Is it?
Self-belief. Is that what that is?
Maybe it is.
It could be. I mean, when you're matched the way that Deontay Wilder has been matched for most of his career, it's very easy to start drinking your own Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah.
It's very easy to fall into the trap.
Is that really something to admire?
Willful ignorance is nothing to admire. It is not a virtue, you understand. Not dealing, not coping, not addressing with certain realities. Like Joe Goossen's previous comments about, Wilder being able to get it together in one camp the same way that Tyson Fury did. That's not the least bit realistic, because the learning curve for Tyson Fury isn't the same learning curve for Deontay Wilder. Tyson Fury always had the skill set that Deontay Wilder did not. Thus, comparing the time frame it takes for them to get it together,
As if they're the same.
it's not the least bit realistic. And
These comments.
Wilder's post-fight comments in reference to the Tyson Fury fight, well, those comments, they're not the least bit realistic either. That kind of willful ignorance,
Could set you up to fail.
Deontay Wilder can cook up any number of reasons why he lost the fight to circumvent acknowledging Tyson Fury as the WBC and Ring Magazine heavyweight champion. He can say what he wants, he can do what he wants, but the reality still is, he's the champion and you're not. And he's the champion and you're not because he beat you. You must accept that if you are to move forward. If you cannot, it's going to be very hard to correct a problem when you don't want to admit to yourself that there is one. I just don't know that I can classify this as something that one should admire, being this deluded, so far gone, so off the deep end that you can't even address reality. I understand that this sport is a competitive sport, perhaps the most competitive sport in the world, the most grueling with the most repercussions for those who participate in it. And in a sport as competitive as the sport of boxing, one has to sometimes believe in things that haven't happened. Even, it's almost delusional. It borders on delusions of grandeur. But Deontay Wilder's situation Is there really something to admire in there? Because this reads more like a cautionary tale of what happens when a guy starts drinking too much of his own Kool-Aid. You know what happens?
What? You get diabetes.
That's what happens. You want to get diabetes? Is that what we're doing now? Is that what we are aspiring to and working towards? Diabetes of the brain? How do you run around telling the world that you're the baddest man on the planet, but at the same time you're telling the world that a 40-pound costume beat you? The baddest man on the planet was beaten by a 40-pound costume? Is that what we're supposed to believe? You tell the world that you're the kind of guy that's willing to die in that ring, willing to go out on his shield, but you're not fit to go out carrying a costume that weighs 40 pounds. We're supposed to believe this. These are the realities that need to be reconciled. And this is why these delusions that sometimes appear to others as self-belief are not conducive towards growth, are not conducive towards progress, and are nothing to admire.